Hey guys, Azar here. Welcome to another tutorial. This week we're looking at Biggs West 57 apartment building. This is one of the most unique buildings I have ever seen, and I'm super excited to get into this tutorial with you. Honestly, I thought I'd be able to cover everything in one video, but turns out there's a lot of stuff. So what we're going to do is in part one, which is this video, we're going to look primarily at like the overall form and how to get that. And then in part two, we're really going to dive into the facade aspects of this project. If it's your first time here and you want more Rhino and Grasshopper tutorials headed your way, make sure you subscribe. And if you want to follow along, click the link in the description box below to download the tutorial files. All right, guys, let's begin. Now, this project is absolutely fantastic and is really challenging, and we're going to just do our best to kind of get the overall form and some of those overlaying geometries that kind of make this project work, right? And there's so much to talk about. I mean, every little aspect of this project could really just be its own tutorial. So one is the overall form. I mean, there's a whole tutorial just on the openings here for the balconies that we could do. We could do a whole other tutorial just on this facade over here, right? There's so much going on that I think the scope for us in this particular tutorial will be limited to the overall form and some of the contouring to get some of those shapes. So let's go ahead and see how we would begin setting that up. All right, so I'm going to head over to Rhino. And again, if you use that link below, this is the file you'll get. It'll just make everything a lot easier. So go ahead and download that and then come back to this video. Here you'll see on the Grasshopper side, I have a curve referenced in here. This is the curve that is the base, basically where the plot of land is, where the building is going to be erected. Now, the reason I've done this here and not made a rectangle in Grasshopper is most likely you know what the site is and where it is, and there's really no need for you to model this curve in Grasshopper. So I have it in Rhino, and if I need to change it or edit it, it's much easier to do that on the Rhino side. All right, nonetheless, let's go ahead and think about how this form is going to be made. So it's a large triangular volume that's essentially sitting on a plinth. Let's see this construction drawing here. You'll see that there's like a podium at the bottom, and then this the curvilinear form is on top of that. So let's make the podium first. So again, back into Grasshopper, all I'm going to do is take this and move it up. All right, that's all I'm going to do. So I'm going to move this curve, okay? And I'm going to move it in the up direction, which is Z. And by how much am I moving it? Well, I have over here 32 feet. These are some estimated values, but I can start with that, right? So let's say I have a slider at 32. Okay, since my units are in feet, this should work out just fine. And we can rename this slider Podium height in feet. Okay, this way we can always change it if we need to. Plug that in here, and you'll see that this moves up 32. Okay, so that looks fine. And of course, with the slider, I can go up or down. I'll just leave it at 32 for now. So it's always useful to rename this as well. I'm going to copy a curve over and rename this top of podium, just so in case I ever need it again, it's much easier for me to find than trying to track the geometry. So I'll hide this. This is quite redundant now. Okay, using Control Q to hide anything you don't need. And now I have this top of podium. What can I do with this? Well, a couple of things you want to start doing is identifying, especially for this project, is what are the edges, you know? Now, the way I've set this project up is, you know, if you look at your x-axis, it's going this way, which is really almost, you could say, kind of the north-south axis, and this is kind of the east-west axis in Manhattan. So, you know, you could do it that way using those, you know, those like the global coordinate system, or, you know, the cardinal directions, right? So, but nonetheless, what you really want to do is just start identifying which of these edges you need and which of the points you need too. So first of all, I know that, for example, the back corner is the one that rises up. Okay, the back corner right here is the one that goes all the way up to this point. So I really need, like, for example, this line I'll be able to draw, and this line I'll be able to draw. So let me start doing that. Let me get that point, find which point that is, move it up, and then draw these two lines. Okay, so this is how I would do that. What I would do is I'd first find out where those points are, right? So you can usually do that by getting control points. There's a couple of other ways, but control points kind of works. Now, the thing you want to be careful about control points is that this is a rectangle, but look how many points come out. 5 points actually come out. A rectangle only has 4 points. So notice that the first point and the last point are actually doubles, right? They're copies of each other. So what you can do is you can remove either the first point or the last point by using shift. Okay, so if you shift the list, and the one thing you want to be careful when you shift is wrap has to be set to false. And by default, you can see wrap is true. So it's not going to remove an item. It's just going to shift the list by 1 unit. So what you want to do is wrap, set boolean, and go to false. This way it won't wrap it. So when it does shift the list, it's actually going to remove an item as it shifts. And now you see we're down to 4. So it got rid of the first item through the shift of 1. Now it's not obvious here, so I'll say wrap equals false. This is just a practice I do to make sure that I know that I've actually changed that on the inside here. Again, I can hide this one now. And here, these are my 4 points, but I don't know which one is point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4. So what you can do is use a point list. And by using a point list, okay, notice when I use a point list, the number and the point are overlapping, so it's really hard to see. So you can use the size, and let's make that, I don't know, 12 feet or so, just so it's a little bit bigger. Maybe we can go way bigger than that. There we go. So now you can clearly see which point is which, right? This is point 1 here in this corner. Therefore, I need point 2 is the one that's going up. So point 2. How do I extract point 2? I'm going to use list item. Okay, list item is really useful when you have a list. Like here, I have a list of points, and I want only that one. So I want index number 2. So I can use a panel in this case, which will be easier. And to open a panel, the easiest way is just double click, double quotations, the number 2, and hit enter. And there we go. So now you have that point number 2 extracted here. I can actually name that as a, let's see, over here, PT. And let's call this, what should we call this? We will call this the highest high corner point. Okay, high corner point on Podium, because it's not actually high yet. It's on the Podium. You can be as descriptive as you want in these. It's actually a good idea to be more descriptive, just so there's a lot of confusion gets avoided that way. And the last thing I want to do is move that point all the way up here, right? Like how high we'll see, but I definitely know, I already know I need to move it. So MOVE to move, and then in the Z direction, so it's going up. By how much? I don't know. Now let's see over here. I have the top of the structure is 467 feet. I could just type 467, get a slider here, and you'll see that it moved, actually moved above that line. Now why did it move above that line? Is because the point was already moved up, right? So it was already moved up, and then I moved it 467. So it overshot this by this slider amount, whatever I used back here, which was 32, right? There we go. So I used this 32, and so that's what happened. So what you can do is actually, if you want to make this a little bit more accurate, what you could do is write building height in feet, okay? And the building height, you want to set the number here. This is actually quite common. You'd want to know the top of the building, not how much to move that point, right? Building height. So I would have to take this number and then subtract the podium height that I have here. So I would subtract, and all you do is double click, hit the minus key, that's subtract. So 518 minus 32. So I need this, so I can bring this slider over here. Okay, so 518 minus 32 is 486, and that is the amount by which I want to move that point. So if I wanted my height to be 467, then I would have to subtract 32 and move that point by 435, and you'll see that point is perfect. It's right there on the line. That's exactly how you'd want to do that, okay? Using a building height as a slider. That makes much more sense. Otherwise, you're always guessing, because then you may change the podium height and then the whole building gets taller, which is not really what you want to do. You want to be able to adjust these independently, and this is how you would do that. Okay, so anyway, we'll just leave it somewhere up here. It really doesn't matter exactly where that is, and let's continue. Hey guys, I just want to let you know that if you're new to Rhino and Grasshopper and want the most effective way to start learning, take my free intro course at onehourgrasshopper.com. I'll teach you step by step the right way to learn Grasshopper and how you can avoid common mistakes that most users make. I'll give you my personal Grasshopper template to keep you organized and my custom components that have helped me and thousands of others be more productive. I'll also give you a list of my favorite Grasshopper plugins. So if you want to start learning Grasshopper the right way, head over to onehourgrasshopper.com and begin your computational design journey today. Let's get back to the tutorial. All right, so now I have that point that's up there. I'm gonna again use this, copy this over, and now I'm just gonna call this high corner point. Okay, not on Podium, that is the actual high corner point, and I can hide this. Let's go ahead and start drawing those lines now. So I know this point, and now I need to draw a line from this point to this point number 1, and this point to this point number 3. So I need point number 1 and point number 3. So let's extract that. Remember how we extracted it here, right? We used a list item and we used a panel. So I'm going to go ahead, select both of those, and Control C, Control V, so I make a copy. And one more time, make 2 copies. All right, and this time, this one will be point 1, and this one will be point 3. Okay, so point 1 is this one, point 3 is this one, and let's draw a line. So L-I-N-E, and this is what you need to use to draw a line between 2 points, this component. And you can choose where you want to start. It really doesn't matter right now, but it might matter later, and we can always flip the direction. It's not a big deal. But let's just start up here at the high corner point and draw the first line to this one down here. Now I could label this point too, but for now I'm not going to. And that's 1. Copy this over, and now we'll draw a second point. Again, it starts at the high corner point, but this time we'll end at point number 3. So here's point number 3, and go ahead and draw that. And already we're starting to see that form kind of take shape. Okay, all right, now how do we actually get that front surface? Right, if I come over here, how do we get this surface? Right, it looks so bizarre in a way, like how am I supposed to extract that? And you'll notice it's actually a sweep, okay? If you think about it, this edge over here is turning into this edge over here. And it's sweeping along this rail and this rail, okay? So whenever there's a sweep, the easiest way to set it up is identify exactly what are your rails and what are your geometries. Now, these two could be the rails and this be the geometry, or the other way around. Really doesn't matter. Just make sure you isolate them first. It'll just make your life a lot easier. So let's go ahead and do that. So these two are not both rails, right? So let's say this is rail 1. So I'll say R-A-I-L. Oh, sorry, what am I typing? Sweep, right? Sweep 2. This is the component I need. I need rail 1, rail 2. What are the different sections? And here's the same height option, which we will ignore for now. But let's go ahead and start identifying which ones are our rails. So let's say, let's see this one. Let's say that's a rail, right? So I will call this rail 1. Okay, so rail 1, that's one of my rails. If you want, you can even give it a different color. So I can go to custom preview, for example, okay, and give this, you know, it takes on this color right now, but maybe we'll give it another color. It takes on a color by default, which may be a little too light for us. So I'm going to paint it a dark green, kind of like that. Okay, so all my rails will be green. So that's one rail. Now the other rail is down here between point 0 and point 1. Now there's a couple of ways to get this rail. Either you extract point 0 and then draw a line between 1 and 0, or since you have the rectangle, you can extract that edge. There's 2 ways, okay? Either way, you'll get the same result. But what I'm going to do is actually, since I'm on this like drawing a line kind of thing, I've drawn 1, 2 lines already, might as well draw a third line for this rail. So I already have point 1, which comes from here, list item 1. I need point 0, so I will copy this again and say list item 0, and that's that point 0. So I have point 1 and point 0. I can draw a line between point 1 and point 0. Now, why do I draw a line between 1 and 0 and not 0 and 1? It's primarily because of the direction. I know this rail over here started up here and went this way. That's why I'm going to start over here and go this way. That's the only reason I'm starting at 1 and ending at 0. So that's this line right here, which you can call rail 2. So this was rail 1. Let me copy all this actually. Bring this down here. This is rail 2. Okay, so that's rail 1, that's rail 2. All right, so we can actually go ahead and plug those in. Rail 1, rail 2. Now I need the sections. What are the two sections? Well, there's one section here and one section here. Again, we have all those points, right? We have a list item of point number 2, point number 1, point number 3, point number 0. So again, I could just redraw those lines again. Really not a big deal. So again, I'll draw a line. This time I'll go from 1 to 2. So here's 1 and 2 is up here. It starts getting a little messy at this stage, but as long as you're following along, kind of tracking and understanding what I'm trying to draw. So I'm going here again from 1 to 2, which means I need another one that goes from 0 to 3. So this will be section 1. I like always labeling because that way I get less confused. As you can see already, we have so many lines being drawn, you know. So that was section 1. Now section 2 goes from 0 to 3. So here's 0 and here's 3. Okay, so essentially we're just drawing lines between those specific points, and you see that's section 1 and this is section 2. And if you have my components, you can use red line as well. So red line helps highlight those things, and then you can see, oh, yep, that looks just about right. So now let's actually try it, right? Oh, sorry, actually I made a mistake. Some of you have probably noticed like, hey, Azar, why are you picking 1 to 2? You're absolutely right. I should not have been doing that. It's not this line at all. It's actually this line right here, which we already have up here. Okay, so if you caught that, very good. If you didn't catch that, then you were like me, getting a little bit lost in the tutorial. So anyway, here we are. That's exactly what we need. So you see the two green lines are the sweep rails. The two red lines are the sections. Okay, so I have section 1, section 2. The problem is this doesn't ask section 1, section 2. It just asks, hey, give me the curves that are the sections. So we kind of have to put them both in here together. And the way I like to do that is using merge. So I'll use merge and merge section 1 and section 2. Now, if you want, you can bring all of these up here. If you want, you can line them up really nicely. You know, there's all these little things that you can do to just, you know, make things look a little bit better. But anyway, here are my two curves, which are my sections. And if I place it in there, ta-da, here we go. And as you're looking at it, you're like, what happened? This looks incorrect. And again, that has a lot to do with direction. Notice that this section up here was drawn from up here to down here. So it went this way. And this section here should be drawn from point 3 to 0. What did we use? We used 0 to 3. So no, we'll start at 3 and then we'll go to 0. And that should fix that. And ta-da, that is the form. Now, it may not be the exact form, but that's one way of getting that form. The exact real form is probably a more rationalized version of this, but nonetheless, this should work as well. Okay, so here we go, and that's the form. Yay, that sounds awesome. Now, I can start hiding some of this, and this sweep right here, I can give it a name. So I could call it, for example, put it in a brep, and call this, you know, front facade sweep or something, just so I know exactly what it is. All right, so that's all good. That seems like it's done. Now, can we actually get the rest of the project in, which is this hole, right? Can we get that part in here? All right, so first of all, we need that curve, right? Can we draw that curve? That's a pretty difficult curve to draw. However, if you notice, it's actually a rectangle in plan. In a plan drawing, like let's come over here. Here's a plan drawing, for example. You see it's just a rectangle. It's a big rectangular hole. Okay, and it's probably offset at a different distance from each side, but for our tutorial, we're gonna offset it just by the same distance. So let's go back to Rhino, okay? And let's find that base curve again, which is right here. And we're gonna offset it. Oh, offset. Now, I like using my offset component just because I know exactly what's inside and what's outside. So anyway, I'll take this base curve, put it in here, and let's think of a distance. I don't know, I'm just going to write 50 feet for now and see what that looks like. And you'll see my component gives you the inside offset and the outside offset. So I only want to keep the inside one. So I'll create a separate curve component and just keep the inside curve, and that way I can hide this. And you can see that's 50 feet. And of course you can adjust this as necessary, right? So this is the courtyard offset in feet. Ta-da, there we go. Okay, so courtyard offset in feet is set. Here is the actual courtyard. Okay, in plan. And now how do we actually cut that out of here? All right, there's a couple of ways to do this. So we're going to try a few different ways, and it may work, it may not work. We'll see. Honestly, I'm not really sure where this will go, but we'll just give it a shot. All right. So I'm going to bring the courtyard over where I can see the facade sweep, and I have the courtyard curve. Okay. So here I have that sweep surface, and here I have the courtyard surface. Let's see a couple of ways. So one way I could do it is, let me try extruding the courtyard. So I'll extrude it in the Z direction. Okay. By how much? Well, definitely well above this, right? I need to go through the surface. So if this is 400, and probably our building isn't going to be much bigger than that. So I'm going to just go like 1,000 feet. So this guarantees that my extrusion is definitely well through this surface. Okay. Now let me try trimming one surface out of the other or something like that. Let's see what options we have around. So if I come up here to intersect, let's see, there's region intersects, split B-rep. Yeah, maybe split, maybe trim. Let's try them out. So let's try a trim, for example, and let me trim this with this and see what happens. And there is some open B-rep result, and if I look at it, one moment, it looks like that. So that's not really working. Let me try another one. Let's try split. So I will split this with this, and you can see, oh, interesting, I do get some result, right? So I split the front facade with this guy, and the result is this. Perfect, because all I need then is the outside one, and I can get rid of the inner one. All right, so let's try that. So here in the results, you'll see I have two surfaces. Okay, so I am going to figure out which one is the surface that's on the outside. Now this is a little tricky. Like, how do you actually figure out which surface is on the outside? There's a couple of ways to do this, but the first method I start with, actually let me take this off right here. There we go. The first method I start with is just a list item. And let me tell you why I do that, because what I'll do is, since there's only two items, it's either the first surface or the second surface, right? So let me go ahead and plug this in here, hide this. We can hide a couple of things here. Hide this, hide this, hide this. And you'll see that the first item is the one we need. Now, as you change your geometry and as you adjust your sliders, if the first item is always this one, then you don't have to do any extra math or anything like that. You just leave it. Okay, so you'll say, this is the front. Oh, it's not a curve. I like to put them in B-reps. And you can always write, this is the, come on, front facade trimmed. Okay, we will call it that, front facade trimmed. And now what I can do is actually repeat this split, except split it the other way around. So now I'm going to split this big guy with the surface and see what happens. Let's see if it works the other way. Copy, paste. So now what are we trying to split? We're trying to split this. And what is cutting it? What's cutting it is this surface. Oh, cancel that. And it works. And again, there's two open B-reps. Okay. So if I look at it, let me just isolate it and look at it. And you'll see that, yep, it's split it. You can see the line where it's splitting. Again, there's two results, right? One's on the bottom, one's on the top. Which one is the one we need? Again, I'm not sure. So what we'll do is, again, just look at the first item. and you look at the first item and you see, is the first item the one you need? And here you see it is not the one we need. The first item, which is what comes out of list item by default, is not the one we need. We need the second item. The second item has an index of 1. So if you pull out the second item, we see that that's the one we need. Awesome. Okay, let's unisolate that. Let's hide this, show this. Awesome, it's coming along pretty good. Let's call this something, and we'll call this the Courtyard walls, for example. Okay, Courtyard walls, and we have the inside. Here's the main test now, okay? To see if we need to do any extra math or not, all you do is just adjust a few sliders. So I'll come here, adjust the offset a little bit. Yep, that seems to be maintained. I'll come over here, adjust the overall building height. Okay, that seems to be okay. I'll come over here and adjust the podium height, and that seems to be okay. Sometimes it breaks. So I'm just warning you now, sometimes if that breaks, then you may have to do some math to guarantee that you're always getting this surface and you're always getting this surface after the trim. Okay, but now we're at the point where we can just start cleaning up. So come over here, start looking at it a little bit differently using a BREP preview. So if you type in preview and you have my components, you'll see you have BREP preview here. So the front facade, we can make that white and give it a black border. I know I'm doing this quickly just because, you know, I use this all the time, but take your time using this one. You can always play around, use different colors. For the courtyard walls, maybe make that some kind of bluish color as the face. There we go. Okay, so that's the courtyard. And of course, now you can also start completing the rest of the building if you like, right? So at this point, I could, of course, take the podium and loft it with this one right here. So these two rectangles can form the base. I can come over here in the back, and then I can create this triangle and turn that into a surface, and then take this triangle, turn this into a surface. I'm not going to do that right here. My job was primarily to show you this. I am actually going to do another tutorial that's going to show you a little bit more about the division of the spaces, in the sense that, let me show you what I mean. So the next video I'm going to do, so keep an eye out for that. If you don't see that this week, just keep an eye out for next week, where I'll show you how to get these lines. You know, how do they actually design this part and start dividing the facade? What's the rationale behind it? How do they start introducing the different levels in there? And then we can even start looking at the windows and see if there's any way we can start to randomize those. Okay, so that's going to be in another tutorial. And I just want to say that if you guys enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up, okay, subscribe. And of course, if you have any requests, you have some super awesome, cool projects, and you're like, Uzzer, how did these people do this project? Send me a comment down below and just let me know what project you want another tutorial on. I'm happy to go and tackle that for you and show you exactly how the pros did it. In the meantime, if you follow me this far and you're interested in learning more, make sure you check out computationaldesignstudio.com as well, where I offer professional training, one-on-one training for architects and designers. See you guys in the next video.